Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. Today is the 17th of May 2023, and these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the latest situation there as far as the area being converted into a military fortress is concerned because of the intensified restrictions that have been marked by disgrace, humiliation, and insult to the people at the hands of the Indian brutal forces ahead of the G-20 proposed meeting that is going to be held in Sri Lanka on the 22nd of this month. Whether it be the APHC, whether it be other parties in the Indian Held Valley, they have all decided to have a shutdown strike on this very day, wherein a proposed meeting is to be held. More than one proposed meeting are to be held in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, an area that is contested, an area that is disputed as per many countless United Nations resolutions, and a meeting is being held there which goes against the norms of the United Nations as well. Special police nakas have been set up there as well. We'll be discussing the situation in the Indian Held Valley with reference to the G20 meeting and all the decisions and important points of views that are there as far as the different United Nations organizations and the different United Nations rapporteurs are concerned, that who have also very openly criticized this decision of India to hold the G20 summit in the Indian Jammu and Kashmir region. This is going to be our first story. Our second story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the attack that happened on the 9th of May this very year, and in which scores of houses, scores of establishments, places, buses, bus stops were destroyed by miscreants on the, of course, advice, should I say, of a political leader, as a result of which we've seen destruction of government properties, of military properties, never seen before in Pakistan's history. We'll go back in time a little couple of days, and we'll give you a timeline of how things transpired as far as at least the Jinnah building is concerned, and how that was destroyed, and how the decisions regarding that were taken, at what time they were taken, how the Assembly of the People began the destruction of this very important monument that signified also Pakistan's establishment. And of course, it was a very important place of where Fatima Jinnah used to reside in the past. This and PTI's politics of destruction and agitation will be part of our second segment. Then we'll be talking about the World Telecommunication and Information Society Day that is being observed today. This highlights the power of technology to advance sustainable development in the least developed countries. We will show you and discuss with you highlights of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres on this very important occasion. And finally, we'll be talking about former French President Nicolas Sarkozy, who has lost his appeal against a prison sentence for corruption. Now the Paris Appeals Court has ruled that he could serve his time at home wearing a tag instead of going to jail. In the year 2021, that is 2 years back, Mr. Sarkozy was sentenced to 3 years in prison, including 2 suspended for trying to influence a judge in a separate case. Let's begin our show with our first segment that concerns Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and the proposed meeting of the G20 that is going to be held in the Indian Held Valley. We've been joined by Sundas Malik, Chairperson, United Jammu and Kashmir, who is here with us to talk about this. Thank you very much, Sundas. Sundas, when you look at Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, the situation there, and the increase in violence and the increase in the barbarities by the Indian forces or by the Indian government there. This is no hidden fact. We've discussed with you many a times in the past as well. But this time there is a deliberate attempt by the Indian government to show normalcy in a region that has been disputed, contested, and under violence since so many decades. Will it have any success if it does happen?
Well, Indians who believe that this farce that they have created in Srinagar to host the G20 is going to fool anybody, then I think it's going to fool people as much as it did when Trump visited and they had to beautify all of India and Delhi in order to fool the Americans about Indian development. The same way, I think their attempt to create a peaceful Srinagar, a peaceful Kashmir, is nothing but what you see is a drama, a farce, and what they are doing currently, since they're doing this since April, the unnumbered, innumerable cordon and search of operations, the nocturnal operations, the hiding out of people who have been affected by the Indian military rule, that sort of thing will and cannot be hidden. And therefore, I think it is important that India understands that theatrics will never work as a tool for democracy.
Now, Sundas sir, I'd also like to understand, there are countless number of United Nations resolutions as far as this disputed region of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. As you said, it cannot be held a secret, the fact of what is the reality of the violence, the barbarities, and the denial of the right to self-determination to the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. I'd like to refer to Fernand de Varenne, who is the United Nations Special Rapporteur on minority issues, who has also talked about the human rights violations that have risen dramatically. And he also says that by holding a G-20 meeting of the Working Group on Tourism on the 22nd of this month, the government of India is seeking to normalize what some have described as a military occupation. If the United Nations says that, if many of the countries, in fact all of the countries that are part of the G-20 that are going to be there are part of the United Nations as well, then why heed to an attempt that has been made by India to hold a meeting or many meetings there?
Well, I think it is, in my opinion, it is just to prove their complicity in the occupation and military occupation of Kashmir. The people of the world, along with the people of India, know and understand what is happening in Kashmir and what sort of an occupation Kashmir is being held under. So anyone who purports it to be an occupation and yet is complicit India's attempt to normalize and show a normalcy in the situation in Kashmir is as complicit as the Indian occupational forces themselves in the murder and the slaughter of the people of Kashmir.
Now, as soon as you talk of
In fact,
complicity,
they
I'd like to
facilitate.
again refer to Fernand de Varenne's statement, in which he also says that international human rights obligations and the UN Declaration of Human Rights should still be upheld by organizations such as the G-20. This is an important statement. Have we had any statement by any of the G-20 countries regarding the situation in the Indian Held Valley recently?
I don't believe we have had any statements by the G-20 countries in the about the Kashmir Valley recently. And like I said, they seem to be complicit in the continued occupation of the Kashmir Valley. In fact, when we see mass detentions being taking place before the G-20 summit, they are not only complicit, but they are facilitators in continued illegal occupation, detention, murder of Kashmiris inside the valley.
That is so true. If you look at the recent report by the Kashmir Media Service, more than 8,000 Kashmiris, mostly youth, have vanished in the Indian custody since the year 1990. Thousands of families of victims have suffered enforced disappearances and have suffered economically because as a result of that as well. And, looking at the intensification of all such activities before this G-20 summit takes place, clearly points the finger not only at India but also at other countries that understand and know what is happening in the Held Valley, but as you yourself have said, and I'll quote you right now, that they are complicit to this. If the G-20 countries are complicit to it and do not want to react to it, turn a blind eye or a deaf ear to what is happening in the Indian Held Valley, whose responsibility then does it become to highlight the issue of and the misery of the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, it is the responsibility of all the allies, such as Pakistan, such as Turkey, such as Malaysia, people maybe who still have a heart, who still we can hope for some sort of, a brotherhood from. They are responsible for raising their voice. Kashmiris themselves, as you know, their voices are being, stifled. They are not being allowed to speak up against the tortures that they're bearing inside the Kashmir Valley. So it increasingly becomes the responsibility of all the allies who claim to be allies of Pakistan, who claim to be allies of Kashmir, to speak up and tell the world what is really going on inside Kashmir, what is really going on in Palestine for that matter. So these affected areas needs active and proactive allies.
OIC, Arab League, SCO, importance of these organizations as well as far as highlighting the issue of IIOJK is concerned?
Well, their importance is only as much as they feel their importance to be. If they don't speak up, if they don't take a stern stand on the Kashmir issue, then their importance is going to decrease with time, because they haven't become part of the solution towards the Kashmir Valley. Rather, they've become silent spectators on what's going on in Kashmir.
Sundas, the APHC has called for a complete strike on the 22nd of May. Also, we know that Kashmiris on both sides of the line of control are going to observe a complete shutdown on this very day. How important has been the role of the United Jammu and Kashmir coalition that you are part of, as well as the APHC and other such parties that are striving for the rights of the people of an illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, as long as we try and stay within fertile lands such as Pakistan and Turkey, who listen to the heat of the Kashmiri people, who listen to what is going on in Kashmir, and who want to take a proactive role in the solution of the Kashmir issue. Our efforts are not only important, but their continued efforts are very important, and we continue to do so. But as long as we do not get the audience that we require, we do not get the audience the world over that we require, I think the Kashmir issue is going to remain, as they say, a part of the subcontinent, and die as a part of the subcontinent along with all the Kashmiris.
Sundas, also Seeks for Justice, another organization, has also called to the G20 countries to boycott this G20 summit that will take place in the Indian held valley. Other organizations also standing up for the rights of the people of the held valley. Do you feel all like-minded organizations should need to join hands in order to create some kind of a tempo to highlight and continue to highlight the activities of the Indian government, of the Indian armed forces, and the response by the major countries across the world as far as denial of any action is concerned, or non-action is concerned concerning this held valley? Do you feel such organizations could play some kind of a role, or do you feel it is the Kashmiris themselves that will play the most important role as far as their right to self-determination is concerned?
Well, I do firmly believe that Kashmiris do play the most important role. They are the first line of defense, not giving up for the past 75 years, standing strong in the face of a military occupation, such as the Indian military occupation. I think they are the most important people in their own freedom movement. However, I feel that any organization that has got anything to do with humanity needs to stand up with the people of Kashmir and the organizations which stand for Kashmir. Because the Kashmir issue, it is not an issue about Muslims, it is not an issue about India, it is an issue about humans being killed by armed human beings, being slaughtered for the past 75 years by an armed force without any defense. So I think it is important that anyone and everyone who believes in the sanctity of humanity should step up for the people of Kashmir and stand along with them for the self-determination that they deserve.
All right. This said, when we see how certain countries do back the Kashmiris and their right to self-determination and all the human rights abuses, and highlight the human rights abuses that are happening in the Indian held valley, the others that turn a blind eye to it. What, in your point of view, needs to be the plan of action in order to translate all these statements that emanate, because even we hear of many important countries of the West that take out statements, important organizations that take out statements, but these statements never translate into action. Pakistan has been highlighting this issue since quite some time. Also, the fact of this G20 summit has been highlighted by Pakistan many a times in the past, recently as well. But how can we translate all of these statements into some kind of tangible action? How can India be pressurized?
Well, I think apologetic diplomacy needs to be replaced with aggressive diplomacy as far as the rest of the world is concerned. Kashmir can not only be highlighted of the world with as just another issue. It needs to be held, it needs to be handled aggressively, because I truly believe that Kashmir stands to be the flashpoint for a huge tussle between such as China, India, Pakistan, if not resolved. So I think the aggression that they show around the world as far as their military might and concerned needs to be shown in the part of Kashmir. Pakistan has continued to not only aggressively but very, systematically held on a diplomacy for the people of Kashmir. But as I see the rest of the world turning a blind eye, I think somewhat of an apologetic stance on Kashmir.
I understand that, Sundas Malik, and I think this apologetic action needs to be changed into a proactive action for the people of the Indian held valley, and to give them their due right to self-determination, something that they have been asking for since decades. This is the need of the hour. This is the need of any person, any country, any society that believes in basic core human values. Thank you so very much, Sundas Malik, Chairperson, United Jammu and Kashmir Coalition, to have joined us, to have talked to us about this proposed meeting of the G20 summit that is to be held in the Indian held valley, despite the fact that this held valley is a contested, a disputed region as per various United Nations resolutions. Let's see how the G20 countries will react from today till the 22nd of this month. Let's come to our second segment, and that concerns the politics of destruction, the politics of agitation, as far as a certain political party is concerned, and that party is Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Now, on the 9th of May, many things happened, but one of the most disastrous things that we saw on screen was the attack on the Jinnah House. Shocking revelations of the May 9 attack on the Jinnah House. These protesters began gathering at the Zaman Park, Lahore, between 2:35 and 2:40 p.m. Between 2:55 p.m. and 3:20 p.m., Dr. Yasmin Rashid, the PTI leader, and other leaders reached Liberty Chalk. At 4:05 p.m., the angry crowd turned towards the cantonment region. At 5:15 p.m. the same day, the first attack was made on the Jinnah House that consisted of around 25 to 30 people. At around 5:27 p.m., that is just a couple of minutes after the first attack, miscreants re-entered the Jinnah House with increasing numbers. Between 5:30 and 6 p.m., these people ransacked Jinnah House, caused serious damage to it. At around 6:07 the same day, Jinnah House was completely vandalized. At 6:10, another group of miscreants continued to devastate the Jinnah House. At 6:13 p.m., another party of arsons reached Jinnah House from Dharmapura, and from 6:30 p.m. until 7:55, around 8 p.m. the same day, about 2,000 people completely destroyed the Jinnah House. This process of destruction continued till 8 p.m. This is just one of the stories, one of the many stories that happened on the 9th of May. We've had bus stops vandalized, completely burned. We've had radio stations completely burned, especially the radio station, the Radio Pakistan station in Peshawar. We've had other government and military installations attacked. This is a deliberate and attack on different installations provoked by a certain political party. Why did it have to happen? Why did it have to happen by people of our country? Something that other countries such as India have always wanted to do. And in fact, it is our own people who managed to do the needful on the behest of a political party. We've been joined by Dr. Niaz Murtaza, a political analyst, to talk more about this situation. Dr. Niaz, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Niaz, when you look now and between the 9th of May and today, of course, we are the 17th of May, we start to unearth more and more details about what happened. What kind of an image has Pakistan given to the world? What kind of image has Pakistan given of its own people, of its own political parties, especially those in the opposition, to the world?
Well, certainly, it doesn't send out, good pictures about Pakistan. It's already mired in so many other problems like floods, economic crisis, the impact of, Ukraine war and so on. And then to have, this kind of eruption of violence in key installations throughout the country gives, the impression that the country has lost control and there is nobody in charge, which is really bad for a variety of reasons. It means that people will be less willing to come and invest in Pakistan. They'll be less willing to visit Pakistan for tourism's sake. They will be less willing to invest in our stock exchange. So it has huge repercussions at a time when the economy is already suffering so bad. And you wonder what the purpose of all this was. There was a fact that their leader was arrested. Fine, they may have objections to that. Many other people also have objections to political leaders getting arrested without good reason. But there is a perfectly legitimate avenue available to take those grievances to, and those are courts. And the courts have many say shown a very big soft corner for the PTI. The PTI leaders get bail in a jiffy, whereas the opposition as it was under PTI used to just roast in jails for months and months and years before they got bail. But forgetting all that, they decided to take the law in their hand, and that's totally unacceptable. Unfortunately, Pakistan has a long history of condoning this kind of violence. We've seen other parties do that, like the TLP, like MQM, and even some other parties. And unfortunately, nobody is really brought to justice, and that's why it's
But Dr.
especially
Niaz, the
important.
fact remains that the way this whole procession took place on the 9th of May, and the way they created damage not only to Pakistan's repute but to Pakistani properties, whether they be government or military, and the way they showcased Pakistan to the world was something that it will take Pakistan a long time to come out of. Kindly stay with us. We have a short report to show to our audience, and then we'll return with our discussion.
On May the 9th unraveled the dangers of politics of agitation. In an unprecedented show of vandalism, PTI supporters attacked and caused damage to the historic Corps Commander's house, originally known as Jinnah House. The historic Jinnah House, a rich national history as it once served as the residence of the founding father of the nation, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Fanning chaos, disorder in the society and reflecting enmity towards the nation, all the rooms, halls, drawing rooms, living rooms, walls, curtains, doors, wooden ceilings, and even the floor of the magnificent Jinnah House had been burned by the PTI arsonists. The broken down and burnt walls, broken floors, and piles of debris of Jinnah House tell the story of destruction and devastation. The arsonists also burned about 1,500 items attributed to the founder of Pakistan, including rare photographs. The Jinnah House tragedy shows dangers of PTI's politics of agitation, firing public emotions without caring the least about the harm such shenanigans are doing to the country. The lengths they will go to in order to protect their narrow politics interests seem to have pushed the country to an abyss. These miscreants evoked the nation's emotions of achieving their limited and selfish objectives and divided the nation into mobs and groups who are destroying this country for their own interests. Those involved in facilitating, abetting, and perpetrating and disgraceful incidents of arson, ransacking, sabotage Jinnah House demonstrated new low in national history. What can be more shameful than that we have burned the souvenirs of our leader?
What a shameful day for Pakistan to look back at even a couple of years from now? Dr. Niaz Murtaza, coming back to you, the Prime Minister has vowed to bring the planners and abettors of the 9th of May violent incidents to justice while he chaired the meeting of the National Security Committee, and has also decided to observe the countrywide Black Day on May 9 every year. Should we be reminded, how important is this reminder for us as Pakistanis to not resort to such activities in the future, and how important is it also for us to understand the importance of nationhood?
Well, yes, clearly, as I was saying before the break, it's important that, the perpetrator, their supporters, their instigators should all be punished heavily, and, they should be made an example out of. There was no justification for what happened. Obviously, we should, keep in mind, the rule of law, democracy, and all that whenever we try that. But I think within the confines of democracy, there is ample room to, sternly take people to justice, hand them down stern punishment. You've seen what's happened in the USA after the January 6th attacks by Trump supporters, there's democracy in USA, the rule of law, but that doesn't mean that,
But
those
Dr.
people
Niaz
were let
Murtaza, you
go.
yourself said, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, before the report, you were yourself saying that the opposition of the PTI are being given special favors by the judiciary in Pakistan itself. So how can what needs to be the process to move forward in order to ensure speedy justice and proper justice to those who have been involved?
Well, certainly, I wouldn't say that, the courts have behaved exceptionally well, especially, the Supreme Court, the way it has handled so many important cases, and, the way it has formed benches, and the way it has shown so much lenience to PTI. It's a valid question, that if the government does file cases in the regular court, then what's going to happen. But then, let's remember, things change. Nobody's permanent in courts. We are going to have major changes in the courts in the coming months. These
we are having some kind of a technical glitch as far as our conversation with Dr. Niaz Murtaza is concerned, as of course we are talking about the 9th of May and the way Pakistanis were ashamed of the way a certain political party and their workers resorted to violence on this very day, vandalized government buildings, vandalized military installations. Dr. Niaz Murtaza, you were saying, now that we're back.
Hello.
Dr. Niaz
Yeah,
Murtaza,
what
you
I
were
was
saying?
saying is, that we should still have trust in our courts. There are the lower courts, and then it will go to the higher courts, and within 6 months you may have a very different situation at the Supreme Court. So I think we need to build our systems, and build their capacity to do proper investigations, collect proper investigation, interrogations, and then the prosecution. This is what Pakistan is lacking. So we have to invest in all those systems and make sure that these perpetrators don't go away, because this is a disease that can spread. First there was TLP, then there was MQM, and now there is PTI, and unfortunately these are all middle class
But
parties
this is
representing.
unfortunate, isn't it, Dr. Niaz Murtaza? This politics of hate, this has destroyed our society to a large extent, especially in the last few years. I'd like to refer to a tweet of our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. He said, "The roots of this mutinous attack on the state, its symbols and sensitive installations on the 9th of May lie in the contents of Imran Niazi's speeches over the past 1 year. He has liberally deployed religious imagery to brand his political agitation as a war between truth and falsehood." How important is it for political leaders to act more responsibly when it comes to being in the opposition or in the government?
Just remember this: before you can get people to, start destroying property, you first have to destroy rationality in society. And that is what PTI has been doing over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, ever since their first Dharna 2014. They have honed this art of, spreading lies, undermining rational thought, in-depth analysis, and spreading this superficial analysis based on social media stuff, where they have this army of people adept at manipulating minds, and brainwashing educated people. This is not a party of uneducated people.
And that is
These are
and that is Dr. Niaz Murtaza, I'd like to understand, that is the strangest part of it all. You try to reason it out with people who are extremely intelligent, well read, educated, but you can't seem to. They are hell bent on following in a certain manner without reasoning or without discussing the pros and cons. They are unable to and do not want to discuss anything that goes against PTI or their leader. Why is that so? Is this the whole maneuvering of the PTI in the last couple of years that has resulted in, should I use the word, brainwashing of people?
Yeah, brainwashing. And I'll tell you, even some of the supporters forget, the core party, which is doing it in a manipulative way. But, even a lot of supporters, you see, they're not, stupid people. They are intelligent people on a lot
Exactly.
of topics. But, they deliberately use superficialities and lies as a political strategy to get ahead and to, sell the point of view of their party. So it's a deliberate strategy. It's not a dumb cult, say there is a cult, there is a cult, but it's not a dumb cult. It's a very sly cult which has, honed this ability to utilize the social media to spread lies and use lies as a political strategy. And, when you end rationality in society, that's the most dangerous thing. When you uh, uh, empower people with lies, then it becomes a very dangerous situation. And we've seen what's happening in India with the way BJP does it, with the way Trump does it in the USA, the way Bolsonaro did it in Brazil. Cases after cases, these populist leaders like Imran Khan are spreading like cancer throughout the world, and they manipulate people. They act as some sort of freedom leaders against the status quo. But if you look at their message, they have nothing to offer. They can only destroy. They cannot build a new system. They have no ideas for doing that. So, however bad that system is, at least we have a system. If even this gets destroyed, we'll just have chaos, and we'll end up like societies like Somalia, Yemen, where there is nothing, where there is no system. So yes, there's a lot wrong with the system, with our traditional parties, but then, come up with solid ideas to, provide better leadership, not this utter lies and chaos and populism, which parties like PTI and TLP and MQM spread. So we need, a better brand of politics, definitely. And definitely, we have to find a way of going beyond PTI's politics. But
When you
then,
talk
it
of a
has to be
way
like,
of going beyond PTI politics, I like this term, going beyond PTI politics. How easy or difficult will it be to come out of this Pied Piper complex?
it's very difficult, when people get into the system, especially the educated people. It's very difficult to get them off it. It's like, they're hooked to this kind of politics, and you see it in the USA and everywhere. But that's where the challenge is. That's what politics is about. There's so many bad brands of politics, and somebody has to stand up and say, no, all this is wrong. What we need is rationality, deep thinking, the truth, principles, which ultimately are vanishing from society at a very fast pace.
Now, the National Assembly also got together and on this very issue and passed different resolutions, also expressing their solidarity with the armed forces and also against this heinous incident. The fact remains that the Parliament remains one of the most important institutions as far as decision making is concerned. As far as why in your point of view have parties such as the PTI even put the parliament into a situation or branded the parliament as an institution that does not have the necessary power? Do you feel this is also one of the tactics that they have had in order to make their party more popular amongst the masses?
Yeah, I mean, this is, the foundation of populist politics, just completely destroy the credibility of all institutions. So that's what PTI has been doing for the last 10 years, whether it's the parliament, whether it's the executive, whether it's the Election Commission of Pakistan, the courts, and now, of course, the final institution, the army. It's taken on the army, and, it's trying to discredit it to show that, the only good force in Pakistan is the PTI. It's above the law. if the law is against PTI, then the law is wrong. PTI is never wrong. And, this is, what it tries to sell. And, people have joined the bandwagon in hordes. You see it on social media, you see it in your social circle. So it's a constant struggle that, you do it on a daily basis within your own circles, try to spread rationality, you write articles, you come on TV to, spread this rational thinking in the hope that people will hook on and that ultimately the truth will prevail, because lies are always vacuous, empty, and it's difficult to sustain lies. And you see that over and over again. So in Brazil, Bolsonaro lost. In USA, Trump lost. A number of other populist leaders have also lost. So it's a constant struggle for those parties, those people who believe in principled, rational politics.
How long will it take, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, for truth to finally prevail amongst the masses, especially amongst those who have been blindly following the politics and the policies of PTI and Mr. Imran Khan?
Well, I mean, there is a cycle. This kind of thing sustains for 5 years, 10 years, and then ultimately it is gives in. If you look at the life cycle of leaders like Trump, Bolsonaro, the last president in Philippines, but then you also see BJP. It's been there for 10 years now. Modi, and who knows, it might win again in the next elections too, which I think are due in 2024. So in Karnataka, you saw the Congress make a comeback. So there is hope, but even these mainstream parties, they really have to come up with a better narrative, and give something to the public and show that they can do different kind of politics, and have a system, because the system is really groaning in Pakistan. It doesn't give hopes to the young population, and that's why they fall for the populist politics of people like Imran Khan, who are complete fakes. So a better brand of politics has to prevail, and the mainstream politicians have a responsibility. At least somewhere from 2008 to 2018, they were not wrong, but at least you could see a few positive things coming in, like devolution happened with the Eighth Amendment. You saw CPAC starting. You saw the first time that there was a civilian exchange of power in 2013. Smooth transfer of power. So there were at least a few things. Pakistan was slowly growing towards where the other South Asian countries are. But after 2018, with a PTI, we've gone back 20 years.
That is so true, and it might take Pakistan some time in order to come out of it. This said, there's there's been a lot of damage that has been made to infrastructure, to property, whether it be belonging to the government. You've seen how Radio Pakistan in Peshawar was vandalized and burnt. We've also seen other buildings that have been burnt in the same manner. Now, a report by the Capitol Police says the riots have caused damage around 250 million rupees just in Islamabad. Who will pay for these damages?
Well, I think they should find PTI and the perpetrators. But, there is a strategy behind that. Just look at, their targets. It wasn't random buildings.
No,
It
it
was
wasn't.
buildings and monuments which were symbols of institutions. Like Radio Pakistan, it's a symbol of the state. It's a symbol of free speech, of, rational speech. Similarly, the Jinnah House. So, they are attacking all those symbols to completely destroy the credibility of all institutions and show that PTI is supreme. So it's very well calculated strategy, and it's very well planned. You can't say that it was just spontaneous. This has been going on for years and years. And if you look at how these kind of mob attacks happen, look at Rwanda, where they had that genocide, where one third of the population was decimated. For a year there were TV shows, there were radio shows who were instigating people, and that instigation has been happening in Pakistan. And that's how. So you have to trace the whole thing. You can't just treat it as something spontaneous done by people on the spur of the moment. This is all very well organized, very well planned, and there's our devious minds behind all this.
Now, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, Mr. Imran Khan has used the word Hakiki Azadi many a times. When will we actually achieve this Hakiki Azadi, this real freedom? We can't achieve that under the guise of parties such as the PTI or under the, under the patronage of leaders such as Imran Khan, because they just use statements, whether they be religious or otherwise, and the real intention is quite the opposite. Do the people, or will the people ever realize this?
No, there's not going to be any Hakiki Azadi. There'll be Hakiki autocracy with the kind of system. Our democracy doesn't function very well. From 2010 to 2018, as I said, there were so many flaws. But at least, we had some freedom. If you have this populist politics, and, he says it over and over again, he's very fond of Putin, he's very fond of autocratic systems where, the leader has unlimited powers to do whatever he wants. And this is what he has in mind, where, he undermines all freedoms, all institutions, and, puts in a very personalized type of, autocratic system in Pakistan, which just revolves around him and him alone.
Let's hope, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, that that time comes soon when people realize the importance of nationhood, of statehood, of all the organizations that are working, whether it be the state machinery or our armed forces, and build the respect for them as they need and as they deserve to have, and stay away from all the machinations of political parties that tend to do the opposite, just like we've seen recently and in the past years as well, especially by parties such as PTI. Thank you so very much, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, to have joined us, to have talked to us candidly about this ideology of the PTI that has finally come to fruition, to light in front of so many, on the according to what happened on the 9th of May, and of course afterwards as well. Let's come to our last two stories, ladies and gentlemen. The first concerns the World Telecommunication and Information Society Day that is being held today. Now, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres may give a very important statement as far as that is concerned. He said that we highlight the power of technology to advance sustainable development in least developed countries. He said the digital revolution is a defining force of our era. He says to realize the promise of technology, we must confront the perils of technology as well, the lack of ethical guardrails and robust governance frameworks. We've seen that, the proliferation of hate speech and disinformation so rampant in Pakistan, the amplification of social divides and economic inequalities, and the risks posed by artificial intelligence, from deep fakes to biased decisions by neural networks that no human can fully explain. These are many of the challenges that remain in front of us, in front of countries such as Pakistan and even in the West, and we need to confront them jointly as one nation, as one global power. And finally, let's come to France. Let's take you to France, where Nicolas Sarkozy, ladies and gentlemen, the former French president, has lost his appeal against a prison sentence for corruption. The Paris Appeal Court nevertheless has ruled out that Mr. Sarkozy can serve his time at his home wearing a tag instead of going to jail. Let's go back 2 years. In 2021, Mr. Nicolas Sarkozy was sentenced to 3 years in prison, including 2 suspended for trying to influence a judge in a separate case. The 68-year-old has been the first former French president to ever get a custodial sentence. Now, Sarkozy's lawyer has said she would launch a new challenge with the Court of Cassation, one of France's highest authorities. Nicolas Sarkozy is innocent, his lawyer said. We will take this all the way. Nicolas Sarkozy has been convicted of attempting to obtain information from a senior judge in 2014 when he had left office. The case centered on a telephonic conversation that was held between Mr. Nicolas Sarkozy and his lawyer at the time, that was taped by police. Now, this is, of course, this gained a lot of importance, and then we saw what happened in 2021, and now in 2023 we have officially seen that Mr. Sarkozy has to continue his 1-year term, but he can stay at home if he wears a tag. Justice, ladies and gentlemen, is extremely important, whether it be in the case of what happened in Pakistan or what happened elsewhere, or what happens or could happen elsewhere in the world. Justice is what a normal society needs, and justice, inshallah, is what Pakistan will see as well. Allah Hafiz.